Hey, what is going on, guys? I'm going to make this intro quick. Today I am sharing with you a kind of mega link pack, if you will, for every single 2023 Formula 1 track here in Assetto Corsa. Down in the description below, you're going to download a text file, and that text file will have the link to all of the individual track mods themselves. And as well, if you do want to subscribe to Pyre's Patreon, you only have to do it once if you really want to. There will be the links to all of his posts for his extensions for every single track. So if you want to get the extensions and the track, that'll be the definitive way to have these track mods here in Assetto Corsa. And you will also be seeing the gameplay with the Pyre extensions in today's video. Really quick before we get into it though, I'd like to give a shout out to my second channel, JC Racing. If you want to see some broader sim racing content besides just Assetto Corsa mods, that'll be the top link in the description below. Let's get on to Bahrain now. This track is the ACU version of the track. It is 5.4 kilometers long and it has 34 pit boxes, so you're going to be able to even get WEC going around here as well. And Pyre does also make a WEC extension for Bahrain, but that's a whole nother video in itself. Pretty sure the race was a Red Bull 1-2 actually, so cementing what we already knew would be the rest of the season, but a great track nonetheless, and always a fun layout to drive is Bahrain. Of course, round 2, we move on to the Jeddah Corniche Street Circuit. This is made by Chicky Freaky, and of course, Pyre extension added on top of it. 6.2 kilometers long, based in, of course, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. While the human rights of the country are definitely very questionable, I will begrudgingly say definitely for a qualifying lap, this is quite a fun layout, and we do have a very high quality mod here in Assetto Corsa in Chicky Freaky's tracks. Even if you don't have the Pyre extension, you'll still be able to get a lot of mileage out of this Jeddah Corniche circuit. Now we move on to, again, what I said a little earlier was my always kind of wish was the first race of the season still. Albert Park. This was the new layout for 2023, removing a couple of the chicanes, adding some sweeping, just long corners in Sector 2. It's 5.3 kilometers long. This track also has 30 pits as well, so if you want to get some kind of supercars grid going. But of course, the real-life race was absolute chaos, even though it was a little controversial, of course, with Sainz's penalty. I still don't think that was a penalty to this day, but regardless, a fun track here in Assetto Corsa nonetheless. Now we move on to the first kind of really proper feeling street circuit in the calendar. This is the Baku City Street Circuit. It is 6 kilometers long, and of course, even with Vegas now on the calendar, it still is the longest kind of straight. It's got a few curves, but it's mostly a straight in F1. This was Sergio Perez's final win, of course, in real life, but I really enjoy Baku, and it's quite a unique track, of course, with that castle section. And overall, we have a pretty good mod here in Assetto Corsa for it, and I enjoy it. Now we move on to probably one of my least favorite tracks on the calendar. This is the Miami International Autodrome, 5.4 kilometers long, and this is one of, I think, actually the only track on this list where if you don't subscribe to Pyre's Patreon, you actually won't be able to get it because Pyre made this whole track. So if you want to have Miami, you're going to need to get Pyre's extensions, but they're super fantastic, and you definitely won't regret doing it. But Miami, it's kind of a shitty layout and kind of a shitty track as a whole, but we're stuck with it, so if you want to drive it here in Assetto, you can. Now we move on to Imola, the race that never happened because, of course, there was some really bad flooding in Emilia-Romagna in Italy during this weekend, so F1 made the rightful decision to completely just call off the whole race. But regardless, this track's 4.9 kilometers long. This is just the Kunos track, so if you don't subscribe to Pyre's Patreon, then there's nothing to really do here with the Imola variant. But still, of course, Imola, it's a great track. I don't think it's necessarily great for F1, but still a nice extension nonetheless. Now for the crown jewel of F1, if you will. This is, of course, Monaco, one of the most, iconic street circuits and circuits as a whole, of course, in the world. 3.3 kilometers long. It's got 22 pits, though, so you're pretty much only going to be able to do F1 around here, but I'm pretty sure that's okay. I don't know what else you'd really want to throw around Monaco. The Pyre extension for this track is very nice, but regardless, this is actually a very high-quality Monaco track in itself, so even if you're not picking up Pyre's Patreon, this is still a super nice get. Now for Barcelona, in my opinion, one of the most sterile tracks on the F1 calendar. Regardless, though, it's 4.7 kilometers long. This is the updated fender layout, so we have the, of course, axing of the final chicane, as well as the more curved-off turn after the second long straight at the end of Sector 2. It's only got 24 pits, so pretty much only F1 around here, but regardless, it's still a pretty decent layout, and if you want Barcelona, the updated version especially, here in Assetto Corsa, then this is going to be the best way to have it. Now we, of course, head briefly over to the Americas for the Canadian GP in Montreal. Circuit Gilles, Villeneuve, 4.4 kilometers long. This is the Terra 21 version of the track. It's a pretty decent version, to be completely honest with you, and Pyre, of course, does spruce it up a little bit. I really enjoy Gilles Villeneuve as a track. I've always enjoyed it, and it's also a very pretty track as well, being, of course, on that man-made island. And I know there are actually quite a few Canadians who watch this channel, so this is going to be, of course, your home race, and it's a fantastic track mod to represent it. Now for the Red Bull Ring, this is the Kunos version of the track, so if you're not subscribing to Pyre's Patreon, then you won't be getting anything out of this one, but I really enjoy the Red Bull Ring. This layout also has 50 pits as well, so you're going to pretty much be able to throw any kind of grid you want around here. But yeah, super enjoyable track and a really nice extension as well. Adds a lot of grandstands, as well as at 1500 to 1505 in game time, you will see some orange flares in the grandstands, which is a really nice and honestly cool touch to this track. Now for the prodigal home of F1, Silverstone, the British GP, 5.9 kilometers long. This is once again the Kunos version, so if you're not getting the Pyre extension again, you're not really going to be getting much out of this, but Pyre adds a lot to the circuit, including the new bridge over the main straight connecting the two buildings on either side. We got 40 pits in here as well, so if you want to throw WEC around here, dream of WEC coming back, then you will be able to as well. Of course, though, it's Silverstone. You already know this. It's a fantastic layout, and nice to see it updated here in AC. Now for the actual cheapest F1 race to attend in person, the Hungaroring Hungarian GP, 4.4 kilometers long. This track has got 30 pits. This is the Fenner version of the track. It's a new layout for 2023. It's a super nice layout. I believe it might actually even be an ACC conversion. I'm not 100% sure on that, though, so don't at me. But regardless, of course, Pyre does some fantastic work to the track. This is a pretty mid-tier track for me, but I know it definitely has its fans, so here is a nice layout for you. The final race before the summer break for F1, Circuit de Spa-Francorchamps. What an iconic track. This is the updated version of Spa. It's made by Gui over on Race Department. 7 kilometers long, of course, and Pyre has added a lot to this track, and this is just a beautiful version of Spa here in Assetto Corsa. Probably actually the most current, up-to-date one in pretty much all of sim racing, but regardless, this is quite a fun layout. It's Spa, it's legendary. What more do I need to say? Doot 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 doot. Max Verstappen. Yes, it's the Dutch GP. We're back. It's Zandvoort. This is the world record holder now for the most on-track overtakes in an F1 race ever. I believe it's 163. It was absolute carnage this year with the constant changeable conditions. And if you want to recreate that here in AC, of course, this is going to be the way to do it. It's not an amazing track by any means, but it's definitely not the worst on this list, and it's got all the new turns and banking and everything, so it's pretty much much everything you could want out of a Zandvoort here in AC. Now to the Temple of Speed, Monza, the Italian GP. Of course, the Tifosi make this race absolutely legendary in the stands every single year. This year was no different, even though there was some Ferrari pain, but a beautiful livery and a nice on-track battle between Leclerc and Sainz. 5.8 kilometers. This is, again, the Kunos version of the track, so if you're not picking up Pyre's extension, you're not getting a ton out of this one. But yeah, super beautiful. Of course, adds all the new sponsors and everything like that. And it's Monza, man. Such an enjoyable track to drive on. I will always go for some good old Monza. Now on to Singapore. And I think when Singapore hits is really when it starts to kind of dawn on me that the season is slowly starting to come to an end. But regardless, I actually really love Singapore Marina Bay. I've always loved it ever since the first time I ever saw it and heard of it. And in my opinion, it's actually quite a fun layout. 4.9 kilometers long, one of the longest, if not actually the longest F1 race of the season. And this track also has 30 pits as well, so you can do pretty much whatever you want around here. And yeah, it's Marina Bay. It's under the lights. What more could you want? Now on to my favorite Grand Prix in all of Asia and one of the most iconic tracks in the world, Suzuka, 5.8 kilometers long. This is the Reboot Team version of the track. It's an ACC conversion. It is absolutely fantastic. And of course, Pyre has really spiffed it up, including Seb's Buzzin' Corner, and I guess what is T2 technically. Yeah, Suzuka, fantastic track. This is probably one of the best track mods in all of Assetto Corsa. And come on, this shouldn't be a hot take, one of the best layouts in all of motorsport. Speaking of one of the best layouts, this is one of the worst. This is Lusail. I guess I take back my Barcelona comment. This is the most sterile track in all of F1. I really don't want to go to Qatar, and I just don't like this track. But if you want to drive it here in Assetto Corsa, this is the Fenner version. It's 5.4 kilometers long. It's actually pretty decent quality. It looks pretty dead because it's in the middle of the Qatar desert, so it is actually pretty dead and boring all around the track. I'm not the biggest Qatar fan, but if you are, here is a track mod for you. Now that we got through Qatar, though, I get to go to one of my favorite races of the whole calendar, especially because I got to go this year. COTA, Circuit of the Americas, of course. It is 5.5 kilometers long. This track has 30 pits. This is also the Fenner version of the track as well. He's been really pumping out some fantastic tracks this year. I love COTA as a layout. I always have, and to see it in person was a ton of fun. A little expensive, though, as you can imagine. But yeah, Murica, what the fuck is a kilometer? All that. But now I'll throw it over to my good friends down south, the Mexican GP at Autodromo, Hermanos Rodríguez. Sadly, this is not the VRC version because their version's encrypted, so Pyre couldn't, do his magic with that one. So we're stuck with the ACU version, which kind of sucks because it's definitely not the best track mod in terms of its quality. But regardless, 4.3 kilometers long, a super unique circuit, mainly because of its elevation in real life. Mexico City is very high up. The elevations on screen because I don't know it off the top of my head, but still I think a fun track nonetheless. We're coming now to the twilight of the season. This is of course Brazil, Interlagos. What a track this always is, and it usually always delivers. I think this race was a little bit more tame this year, but regardless, I absolutely love Interlagos. 4.3 kilometers long, such a fast flowing layout, and man, I could sing Interlagos' praises for as long as you guys would listen. But regardless, a very good version of the track. I believe this is the VHE version, and it's pretty high quality, and of course, what a layout, and the Brazilian fans are always a riot. Now on to, in my opinion, race of the year. I'm still waiting for an apology for all of my Vegas haters before the race. Of course, Friday, for anyone with a Friday ticket, I truly feel horrible for you. I'd be so pissed off if that was me. So I hope you bought your $200 t-shirt and you're happy, and maybe that class action lawsuit will get you some money. But regardless, 6 kilometers long, going down the strip. What a spectacle, and what a race it was. Looking forward, of course, to 2024. Viva Las Vegas. I'm hyped. And now we end the year with the consistent wet fart that is Abu Dhabi. At least we got a good track mod for it here in Assetto Corsa. Yas Marina, this is made by Chicky Freaky, 5.3 kilometers long. This is the full updated layout, so the new hairpin at the end of Sector 1, as well as the kind of sweeping left-hander at the end of Sector 2 going into Sector 3. But a very high-quality track mod. Honestly, probably, again, one of the highest quality track mods for Assetto Corsa. Shame, though, that that title was given to Abu Dhabi. But yeah, that was all 23 races here in the 2023 F1 calendar. This was quite fun to make. I hope you enjoyed F1 in 2023. We're now going into the long winter, but I'll see you all in January for the Rolex 24. Looking forward to it, but enjoy the off season. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Have a good one, guys.